먹고나오지 등에디 속세도 퍼바고는 가지시오니 엄마만도 쉬울 때 방어할 때 이런데 냠든 제일 셔터요 말이 가가가가 소소데 책상만 요리 때 동호들이 냠들은 그래서 껐다기 시냠 jorwa지 파티는 따뜻하다 공을 아유 조르디 데르카시 록다 마토 록도 소도 손 제거리 이런데 조르디 생거나 거기 댄스오 로봇을 기보요리 대 상해시거리 야 뭐 그러면 속자 탐시 코티를 맞지 탐시 디들 시거리 데르티니 디동 마시는 코가 차를 동시에 이시리 껐다 이시냠 jorwa지 동네 벤르다단데 사키 가가면 됐어거든요. 다다 콜로 덴초 사키 가가면 자롱년이 이제 덴초를 삶의 주대 기부 망보로는 다 턱은냐니 콜로 덴초를 넣어요. 덴초가 맹게되니까 덴초 지와데 이제 대한 초가 대한 미베 대한이 니오리 초가 대한이 동지스메베 싫어 매인솔라 초가 대화래. 대 상제 고만 통조래. 대 마음에는 섭어 대화지. 다스 섭어 대화. 데르티리 다 호랑 들이선 거래. 호대이 유홍대래. 초가 대화도 미베 대화니. 초가 대화 대위 조들 섭어디 다다다 사베 주디냐는 가이를 띠요래. 가이제데 다다 탈랑 것은 말이 배송했더니 대통령이 농시 봐라. 이제 당아 메시지라면서. 왕이었던 와시 진짜 제도. 그럼 하긴 왕이었던 데는 그 왕시는 거 두네. 그가 있으면 냠도 미네더니 왕이었대. 왕자시고 되는 선거를 대대들이 다 터도 왕이 제바트 왕수 제왕들 또 가리선 거를 되려면 다다다 내 값을 탑람치가 탑가리 sen derkek ni bo sentin tamsele 요장 derkek ni bo ti todo 아니 네오 값을 거지 값을 가리 니 값을 내고요 니 tok 값을 내고요 대 양털을 말아 또 어살 당시 와서 또뭐니 당시 와서 오, 너 차한테 너 차 소가 내가 지금 뭐 있으면 내가 샤워 걸래. 내 맞은 미들이 내 의스나. 오, 차 왕다스에 와서. 오, 해당 롱다스에 와서. 해당 롱가랑 이면 너무 독점 되더니 세와서 그거는 하는 나서는 내 독미를 결털래. 대리다 당시 포왔다고도 내가 포왔다도 가리 그리 세이네 내가 쉐버감니 남기 독성지 나와 지발었던 지발에 돌로디 나와 진 나치 나와었던 나와 지발었던 대가리들이 도착하기랑 이 템로요리 들이 지발에 돌로던지 대가리 이제 돌로 사지에 살딱딱 요리 깝들들이 속지는 나오고 지발은 포함되고 고성 깝들이 냠이 맞아게 냠이 뭐 가자게 샘 주바면 냠이 돌 야는 그런 끼끼끼를 되지 랑은 오시네 살은 투주만 양자 출구요 말에 늘 저거 유지 끼끼끼를 들이 죽을 상계로래 와도 죽을 세우는 거야 내 포화들이 유심히 와서 그래 들음 나지 도성 거도 줘야 돼 이제 토르랑 이밀려래 델레바트들이 용도가 제 말람가 제 들이 깝지들이 따라하는 그런 저 이속 깝을 받지 따따따디 그러니 놀리지 털렘들이 차포갑 첨포 니덕 말람 숨르더니 내가 될 대식이 뭐 코랑 떡부들 내고들 들이 지금 뭐 두네 백을 맞들이 깨니 아통을 이거들이 랍상 되게 거는 정도를 가라로 두고 랑을 정말 들이 줘봤을 때 양자를 들이 깨니 하나 마마마 파도 그래 들이 로도에 대들이 남시 파도 없고 탐치는 계속 그래 들이 탐치의 상문은 초가 돼야 돼 초가 되가 먼저 제발 때다가 나서면 뒤에 탐지 냥이 뭐 콜로 된 조리 파파게 도디로 이렇게 제발 요마 라이치 벌써 요마데 너다 따버드는 저 요리 드리티베 거다 신념 좋아하데 되게 오 그냥 바로 저거 당 내가 지금 것이 내가 집에 갈로 가야 되나 sen 남도 탐지 가네 sen 대식이 뭐 광토를 한 소를 그러니까 이제 매비시 잘 들들이 양자 있는지를 들고 와서로 그러면 뒤하고서는 들이 대동들 잘매 봐. 대동들 잘매 봐. 들사람들 가디는 사 이시들 자같은 이시로 됐는데 가이로 우리 쭉 해야 되는데 네. 아따따. 가이제는 다톡이 돼요. 도진 장들 때문에 다다는 것을 대동이 잘매나 디디와데 샘라시 남카타베 디디와에 들 판 자와요 얼마 철도와요 얼마 센데지가 너잘 매번 너잘 매봐 동지 창탈로 라이시와 탐실 희열에 대해서 거 너잘 매봐 착갈이 디는 너잘 매봐 동지 상지에 디를 디리다 당한테는 디디네 사촉 세계 파발라 디네 디리 대화침이 초고 대화티 람도 세바이레스 들이 다 죽을래 롱걸 저거 다 되는 경우요래 벨메도 저 사원란에도 막 뭐는 거래 따띠 하자된 사버리티 근데 책들 내는 동네에서 가사까지 찾는 걸 사키는 데요래 들이다단지 포하는 제 그요래 또다 이제 토라 이제 저로서 독진게 하자기 기보래 너나 디 동성을 요래 근데 동다 된 초기 대와 대래 성을 요래 대기면 깨들이 잘 미쳐서 갈 틀을 맞으는 로열고 그냥 가고 가토 다시 강이 되나 그래 안 로어디 드니 포화를 남동원이 다니 숨불가를 샘내로 샘이나 드니 양짤들이 딱 나의 나 샤도서 또 마음판으로 들 마음으로 들 로아를 참으로 다다 바디 나는 답게 되는 걸 소자를 보지 무슨 사족 침바 참바도 소자를 보지 시합도 써오래 바디 틱탑인데 드니 다 포화 잡을 때 뭐시나 포화를 잡을 때 생활하고 그래서 내가 말아리밖에 생활이요 통남대 대마 마톱나시 보는 포함하다 좀 통남대 받으라고 세고 내로 통솔 세고 내로 썩은 통솔을 못해 포자 저거리 거리 샘 자롬때 저 타워를 쪽들이 자롬 쳐도 열매 맞고 있으면 받아 통남대 막 가래 나지님은 독도 샘나 새로 나지님은 독도 요 말이지 나지니 되는 철리다 코와요 콘데니 같은 가지로서 하콜이 가다가 딱 올리는 얘기를 때다가 냠자지나잖아 냠자가 페임을 생원 내로도 야나 우리 망보슈레 타바시면 도로서 탕직삼띠 튀니죠나 감성감은 만나러 소스면은 들이 곰다 하적 페임시다 밤마들 따뜻한 나버는 사야먹고 쉬어요나 곰자실리 답죠 곰자서는 망보 사지사로 또 땅으로 그러면 그래서 세부 내로부터 사제에 이나 요마 랑의 내로 랑의 똑바르면 뭐좀 땡겨 별로 저 타원데 차로 땡겨 요 말이야 장소는 차로서 봐 잡수는 저도 그래 비대도들이 내로부터 기쳐 버리지 실로 요매 말이 고강이 세부 내로부터는 두바콩을 매서 이라던 어디 저래 딱구나 아, 너네, 라디는 너래. 고바 찔 잡탄 가서 랩탈와 토가더니 사진식 하는 차이고 그러와 들이 깨보더니 어디서 리다 생 나지 도선 대박 매박 차그런데 이제 토라 랩들 들이 이제 토 랩들이 깝더니 다 되는 거래 오 들이 딱 세운디 나 가리 차도 들이 털판도 그래 대회는 되는 나에 좀 말했다 대니 몰라 대이 내가 그래 저 파니에 걱정이래 세디 다디 이걸 타고 요래 별라 이래 세디 라상 홍트인데 예담 트인데 이제 시작이 요래 이 세디 홍트이소나 들이 이걸 마바고요 말해 깜더니 끼찍 까마지 끼찍 적상게 끼찍 세라지서 잡을 테니서 말해 내로 세워 시들렸다 비용치고 요래 깜더니 사지 죽을 템로 요래 자로도 약속을 템로 요래 사지심지 각하만 이것이나 들이 맞아야 따뜻한 뭐라고라 아니 거기 니 돌이 다 이제 돌 니도 하고 말해 또 보고 서서 이제 돌 살랑때 매운도 말해 살랑하고 서서 같이 새로 세초요래 파지를 같이 일니 요래 저세 마타도 따오나니 새로리 니디요 말해 니디메 바세 통제나 나동 자동 샤브로를 차리리 내가 니디면 니디더니 니서 나니 소리 나연 좀 봤대 너무 치신 안진데 어찌를 그래서 잘살라 나연 좀 봤대 잘거리 다지니우라 다지니우를 때때 다땀 호락 사오리 다음에 봐 다음은 다지니 요말고 랑지고 통대나서고 저다 나와 탐지라고 싶으면 이 따뜻히 니 톡 영적 공간이 이제 돌아 샘내로 가나 이를 내려 요래 들리대 아다 포악이 키워는 되게 속제 나오고 마치 받더니 들이 뭐냐면 지금 보았다는 거서 포악이 속문에 주 보았대 들이 롱을 조금 보았더니 양 오늘 이거 축구 포함에 돼 속제 나오고 마치 샘 파트밤에가 차네 철 아디 마샬 공에 토랑 뜨지나 과야 타와타는 차대에서 오늘 내 샤벽감이 들이 잡는 기다려잖아 들이 파스를 탐타고 이제 죽어요 매 들이 말했더니 나이지만 니들은 다 코와 통만 보면 박차를 딱 나이지만 때문에 딱 들어오는 뭐 떠가대 아궁 나도 그래 들이 마마마는 때 봐도라 참도 그래 다 봐도면 고택 작품을 써고요 대당시 실마시리 셰요래 난 잡을리니 써고요 독시 사막에 써고요래 그래 삭지는 때인데다 저런 보아요 보아대들은 철록거리 이제는 젊은들이 이제는 나이는 좀 랩소나 들이 딱 들어오고 공사해 이럴 때 만지면 배달라 이 세마트 홍 거기 나도 대샤로 나도 홍홍홍은 가 홍탑을 저러나 이렇게 박차대 만지면 홍을 다지니 오면 여기 홍을 다지니 오면 대용대 다지니 메르테 나다 이제 토니 마행바를 사직군들하면 마행바도 영 마행 하마거나 딱 홍대게 되니 마행바를 하면 이게 착해요 하고서
Agus.
요. 대박.
Genting kolam matok. So you continue to visualize the mantra garland, and so I continue to say a few words about the bodhicitta kila. And as I mentioned before, I have already taught on that before, and also it's in the book. But in the past, maybe I have more explained it in a separate way, but not how it all kind of links together. So the union of wisdom and form, meaning, signs and symbols, and so forth. So this union here, the union, for example, of yab and yum. And as we said before, some people develop misconceptions or partial understandings or wrong understandings when they see that, this image of yab and yum. But actually, when we really understand, when we look at this image of union and understand then we see that actually that's something that we can all relate to instantly. When we see this image of union, we all understand that these are two companions who are having a good time. They are experiencing bliss and happiness. We all understand that because we are all born from a womb, and this is how a womb birth happens. But if we don't understand the meaning of it, then it just perpetuates samsara. If we do understand the meaning, then it becomes this unified state of primordial wisdom. And so this is explained extensively, for example, in the Ganges Mahamudra text, or in the Chakra practice, or any practice on the channels, winds, and drops. In the new tantric system, even though there are many different classes of tantra, the essence of this tantric practice, according to the new tantric system, is included within the practice of chakra samvara. And so this term chakra samvara, the demjok in Tibetan, it means supreme bliss. So there is two kinds of bliss. There is the supreme bliss, and then there is the inferior bliss. The supreme bliss is the non-dual bliss that leads to the maturation of enlightenment. And the inferior bliss is the immature bliss, the samsaric bliss that perpetuates samsara. But it is this bliss that is the source of both samsara and nirvana. So either the supreme or the inferior bliss. So chakra samvara or demjok means supreme bliss. And it is the essence of all the various classes of tantras according to the new tantric system. And mainly as in this path, the practice that develops is the experience of the 4 levels of joy or bliss. Milarepa, when he explained this path of skillful means, he said that this union of the experience of empty and bliss must be united with the 4 levels of empowerment. And so in the secret mantra, we always receive 4 levels of empowerment when we receive an empowerment in order to mature our body, speech, and mind. And that is why the empowerment is said to be so precious. And especially of the 4 levels of empowerment, the 4th word empowerment is very precious, because this is where we are actually introduced to the nature of the mind. It is said that there are 3 circumstances when we actually come to the natural state of the mind. That is when we are in a deep sleep state or sleeping, during sexual union, and at death when the consciousness transfers. And we come to, the state that we come to is our Buddha nature. And we come to this state because we all possess it. All sentient beings possess Buddha nature. We just don't recognize it. We actually always come to our Buddha nature, but we don't recognize it. For example, we come to our Buddha nature in the deep sleep state. And somebody who is an experienced practitioner, they may recognize the luminosity during the deep sleep state. And this is the awakening of ignorance, when ignorance becomes luminosity. Or when we work with attachment, then the attachment is transformed into the experience of great bliss during sexual union. So normally when great bliss arises, we actually, what arises actually is non-duality. But as it arises, we don't ordinarily recognize it. If we recognize it, then desire transforms into empty bliss. And then for hatred or anger is related to wind activity. There are 3 ways of transforming the afflictive emotions. So if they are transformed, they become medicinal, and if not, they become poison. So then next, so we come to the natural state of the mind during death and the transference of consciousness. And this is where we practice pova, the transference of consciousness. So when one dies, one goes through different levels of dissolution. So these are called appearance, increase, and attainment. So first, the consciousness dissolves into what is called appearance, and then appearance dissolves into attainment, and then attainment into increase, and then increase into attainment. And after that, after the dissolution is complete, we come to the actual natural state of the mind. We come exactly to the state of Buddhahood. And it is said that this happens at a time when the outer breath has stopped and the inner breath has not yet stopped. And that is the time when pova should be performed. So for someone who possesses practice, and they will dissolve, they will go through these stages of dissolution while in a state of practice, and then in an instant may recognize the natural state of the mind, and then they will no longer become confused. The confusion will not arise again. They attain enlightenment in the Dharmakaya in an instant. So we call that merging with the Dharmakaya in the Bardo. So after we have gone through these three levels of dissolution, we naturally come to the fundamental nature of the mind at the time of death, or during sexual intercourse, or in the deep sleep state or the dream state. And what we need to do is recognize that state. And so it is just like someone kind of, when we die, for instance, walking up a ladder. So if they keep walking up the ladder, then they come into your side, like a Dharmakaya side, and then you can instantly pull them up into that state. But if they don't keep walking up, then they will just go down and fall into the lower realms. I have to go here now. I'll go there later. So the seat of our supreme bliss is within our mind. And we are introduced to it in the Chakra practice, for instance, as we engage in the new tantric practices, but also the same happens during the Vajrakilaya practices. Actually, it makes no difference what deity we practice. They really are all the same. Ultimately, we always come to the same view, the natural state of the mind. That needs to be recognized. So during union, for instance, or when great bliss arises, great bliss must be recognized. When great bliss arises, all ordinary thoughts cease, and we come to Buddha nature. And non-dual primordial awareness naturally arises. We only need to recognize it. And when we recognize it, we will not engage in dualistic grasping again. If we do not recognize it, then we will continue to wander in samsara. Actually, ultimately, we are never separate from this empty bliss. And that is our true nature, the nature of primordial awareness. And it is said that within the expanse of primordial awareness, all the Buddhas are one. So the highest state of bliss of the four levels of bliss, is the supreme bliss, the state of the Buddha Vajradhara, empty bliss that we are always inseparable from. The nature of this bliss is like space. In the Yamantaka practice, there's in the prostration, in the homage, it says, I prostrate on the ultimate level, free from meeting and parting. There is no coming together and no separation. The state of Buddhahood is always inseparable from us. And so through the bodhicitta kila, we come to the to recognize the state of supreme great bliss. And then through such recognition, we may merge with the Dharmakaya. So it is from this that the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakayas emerge. It is just like one seed of a flower leads to many flowers. So that is a very profound point. And the words here relate to various teachings of Mahamudra, but also Dzogchen. In Dzogchen, for example, we speak about the liberation of the ground, which is the same experience as coming to the fundamental nature of the mind and recognizing it in the context of the Chakra-samvara great bliss practice. And so, coming back to the pova practice, now when at the time of death, after the dissolution has occurred, if we come to a natural state of the mind, if we do not recognize it, we will continue to grasp, or will again grasp at a self. And then you will think, I have died, for example. And once this concept of I has arisen again, you will be dragged down into the lower realms. That is actually also explained very clearly by Sogyal Rinpoche in his book on the bardo, the stages of bardo. So during the there's a certain time when we practice pova for someone, so that they recognize the nature of the mind. However, Mila Ripa had said that one should not practice pova for someone unless one has attained the path of seeing. So what is the path of seeing? It is when one has realized the nature of the mind. Then it is suitable for one to practice pova on behalf of someone else, because then one's mind is like hot water that will cause the ice block of the other's mind to merge non-dually with the hot water, to melt. Once one has reached the path of seeing, there is no more grasping, no more thought of self and other. There is no more confusion within the mind. And then it is suitable to practice pova for others, because then one remains in an ongoing state of meditation. And the benefits of meditation are great. It is said in the Great Liberation Sutra that it is of a greater benefit to spend a single session in meditative concentration, than it is to safeguard the lives of all beings in the three realms of samsara. So such is the power of meditation, because we can benefit so many sentient beings through meditation. So when one dies and one remains within a state of meditation, one comes to the state of Buddhahood, when one recognizes one's fundamental nature. And that is also what is meant when we always say that there is no other Buddha than your own nature. You have to realize your own nature to be the Buddha. When you recognize this, your mind becomes like hot water, and no more ice can form. The ice will melt. So that is extremely important. And here, it doesn't matter whether one follows a religion or not. One only needs to recognize the nature of one's mind. So, for example, at the time of death, when the dissolution process is completed and one ordinarily would fall into an unconscious state, that is when one gets to the fundamental nature of the mind. And this is where a practitioner may recognize their true nature. So one way to practice with this beforehand while we are alive is that every time you wake up from sleeping, you can visualize, bring back to mind the Hung syllable or the Yidam deity. When you remember the Hung syllable, then in this moment, no self is present. And in this instant, you are a Buddha. In the Manjushri Namasangiti, it says, in an instant, he becomes a Buddha. in an instant samsara, in the next moment samsara may arise. So that is the benefit of recognizing, seeing the nature of the mind. Buddhas and sentient beings on this level are not separate. And you can practice in these levels of dissolution as you are falling asleep and waking up. When you fall asleep and all dissolves, for some practitioners, a state of luminosity remains. And when that is recognized, then one gains the ability to sleep at will and to wake up at will. And one wakes up within the view. One falls asleep within the view. This is the state where one has perfected the paramita, the perfection of wisdom, where one has realized empty clarity. So otherwise, not recognizing it, not remembering the hung or the yidam, you wake up and you think that I have slept. And it is said that the greatest demon is the grasping at a self. And so self-grasping leads to the perception of self and other, which is the very seed of samsara. But if you awaken within the view, then no concept of self and other will arise just naturally. According to the 37 practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. So you can train your mind in falling asleep within this state of the view or viewing your mind, and eventually recognize how you dissolve into the ground of your mind, just naturally. And so this is the reason why the practice of pova is very important. So the pova is ideally practiced when someone's outer breath has ceased and the inner breath has not yet ceased. Then one may awaken in the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, or Nirmanakaya through the practice of pova. And so particularly the Dharmakaya pova is related to the time where the outer breath has ceased and the inner breath has not yet ceased, when we would ordinarily fall into an unconscious state. And so instead of falling into that unconscious state, instead of falling into a state of self-grasping, one dissolves into the space-like nature of the mind, which is like an early morning sky. One dissolves within view. And within that, no more self, no more habitual patterns will arise. The moment this notion of me arises, all the habitual tendencies accumulated since beginningless time will re-emerge. It is just like first you have taken off your old dirty clothing and then you are putting them back on. If you're putting them back on, you continue to wander in the bardo. This is also explained in a prayer called the Gongchi Gyamso, a Dzogchen prayer called the Ocean of a Single Mind. But it's also related to the practice of Mahamudra or the Dharmakaya pova. So the moment after dissolution, the moment this concept of me arises, you are putting back on your dirty old clothing. And so as a method for that not to happen in preparation, now you can habituate to meditating on the syllable hong. Whenever a thought arises, think of the syllable hong and transform everything into hong hong. And when there is such awareness of hong, then naturally the concepts of self and other and all the habitual tendencies can no longer arise. And you will naturally find yourself in a state of non-distraction. So it happens naturally. When you visualize the hong, you will naturally find yourself in a place of non-distraction.
The same total British also. Same total saying, same total saying that preparing Gawang. Now, yab-yum down county. Now we should have the yab-yum. Then now, the data Jenny Tomba, the Zerang in Mataba, Tomba in Tomba yab-yum. Then now don't so yam the race. Tell Nami can you now I should have the water Simon Jingle Mary. Dumatavati. Nasi Jamai machine, Nasi Dumatava, the Dumata Tenzin tongues from the one song. Later Shiba Kanta, Tamsi, Fatata, triple curse about it. Now I have someone with yab-yum, not only yab-yum, not only yab-yum, even did not all drama the child. The Mima mean Taba than you were demanded. Congress, they cup. Oh, ye that lower to that song. Oh, ye that jelly saji to get up the saji, young lower Pachago, which are lower to me, dip saji. Don't know jump at it for money. Ah, let the day 3 days in each chat. Did it make up to the teacher of Charlie? Delately, chocolate tama than you make up tama than you know. Tapa chalately, goes on somebody. The sugar woman by the Thomas Haji and Asso. There is it that was Haji study. Goes on a cell or in Tama, Tapa to the song. Mata, but the young dirty. Dying, you mong, Mata, but you mong chocolate only. Come to a child in the Senate only. Dirty Tajata Hawali. Then you won't talk child. You know, the child was also. They mean so much. Don't matter, neck up draw the Jamata. Till ye district was draw to Tamara Yori. The lower Pacha and Charles Chatham. They asked me the lower Chadad. Oh, ye die, lower Chadad. The Pacha task of San Honso Tama that. Oh, she just how to cook so draws the tattoo. Talk with in the Tata Committee. There's a turtle said the sticky body. Say, I am the value sugar more ye that's on the there's a child. Oh, sugar taba, I didn't up tamani, a child wrote. There it is that Jumma Serum Butcher somebody. Gum yard, Namto, Sharon City, Shaji, Torson, Shaji Dilly, Nivame, Nidime or Torson. They have said, chocolate jewelry, shutter chocolate song. Lucky the second in the song. Not to Madro and not to less about it, Tapa Chago only. They could have less only. Less are tip of chat, that was song only minute. Lay Pacha majority, not to shutter to me, chocolate song. There's a song. The legality is that Tapa Chanita is in my me. That could not moon and to bat energy. For the chitam, chocolate. Oh. Yet, chocolate comes so, chocolate, yet chocolate song. Chocolate song, chocolate longer song, tapa jelly, Madame that they got door. So, oh, that's it of the dollar. Now I don't want you song to what tasty. This thing only, they got more shimashita, they tama not never. Don't say jelly them for day in Meva, half on it, and for day you meet, half for day you meet. It's the quite she probably, long war saying on it. That's in my day of property. That's how you can Jimati, they'll tap the desert. Counter tap it, Kanga counter tell a teton passo. Didn't roar sauces of the Tabara glass of water. Kanga, she just says, I just saw a chase on this woman or somebody. She would chat and roar on his also, she loved chatting nothing wrong. Take it, little your money. They get it to you without the 사제 류동은 말이죠. 내적인 류동 대성을에 대다우리 되게 잡는 있더니 나한테 하장 동체모래 홀대니 떼와니 이렇게 했는데 좋아하는 쪽으로 써놓다 대단한 참적을 라지델레.
So then it says in the end of the same verse, so when the bodhicitta kila strikes into the concert secret place, may clouds of emanations, the sublime suns be sent forth. And also in the amendment of Vajrakilaya, it says that the bond with the father appearance is mended, and the bond with the mother emptiness is mended. So all appearance is the yab, the male aspect, and their empty nature, the empty nature of all appearance is the yum, the female aspect. All appearance appears, yet is impermanent and therefore empty of self-nature. Appearance and emptiness are unified. So all that appears and exists is an illusory form. So to a practitioner who understands that and who doesn't grasp at a concrete reality, appearances will manifest, but they will recognize appearances as illusory by nature, not truly existing. This is also referred to as the illusory samadhi. To such someone who understands this, all appearance is the nirmanakaya. So appearance is the yab and emptiness is the yum. Appearances are empty, they are a union. And likewise in our mind, various thoughts may manifest, pure and impure thoughts. Ultimately, when recognized, when one does not grasp at their true existence, they become nirmanakaya too. So only temporarily, as the Buddha had said, beings are obscured by adventitious stains. Ultimately, beings, all appearance is primordially pure in essence. Confusion only arises momentary. So even though sentient beings are in essence pure, are in essence Buddhas, in an adventitious way, they momentarily are obscured. And that is, the obscuration occurs the moment the concept of an I arises within the mind. That arises first, and then from this thought of me, an attachment to self and others arise. And instantly the mind then becomes like an ice block, temporarily. So in terms of the nirmanakaya, we have a pure and an impure aspect of the nirmanakaya. The pure aspect, for instance, is explained in the Samantabhadra prayer. It explains how from a single nature the 5 wisdoms arise, and as they mature into the 5 Buddha families, which then multiply into 25 and so forth. It is very clearly explained in the Samantabhadra prayer. And from an impure perspective, the 5 afflictive emotions arise and then multiply. For example, first attachment arises, and from attachment arises greed or stinginess, which then leads to birth as a hungry spirit. If one recognizes the nature of attachment, then it may mature, and the impure afflictive emotion becomes a pure primordial awareness. So the 6 afflictive emotions are also just a temporary, illusory state, all arising from the fundamental nature of the mind. But when not recognized, they become the afflictive emotions. And temporarily the mind is in an ice-like state. Actually, the mind, it is said, is primordially pure in essence and only temporarily obscured or confused, but liberated fundamentally and primordially. So this relates now to the practice of Vajrakilaya. In the Vajrakilaya practice, we engage in various temporary activities, such as the wrathful activities of slaying and liberating beings in a forceful way, as we mentioned before. But we also mentioned that this is a bringing to one's ultimate Buddha nature. And ultimately, Buddha nature cannot be destroyed, cannot be slain, because its essence is primordially pure and unconfused. This duality of purity and impurity only arises temporarily. But Dharmakaya is never pure or impure. And it is always in a primordially pure state. Khenpo Münzer Rinpoche had said that when you meditate and all kinds of thoughts arise, and when these rising thoughts become liberated, they lose their power. When there is no dualistic grasping, they become liberated within the ultimate view. And this is called the liberation of all arisings as the Nirmanakaya. then thoughts become Nirmanakaya. This is how it is explained according to the Dzogchen tradition. Otherwise, if not recognized, one will engage in karma and place habitual tendencies or imprints into one's mind. And again, the 6 realms of samsara, the afflictive emotions, arise. Whereas when thoughts arise, and we recognize these thoughts upon arising, they become liberated upon arising, then they become liberated as Nirmanakaya without leaving a karmic imprint in the mind. And then their pure essence will reveal itself as the 5 kinds of primordial wisdom, just according to how it is explained in the Samantabhadra prayer. Actually, all phenomena of samsara and nirvana have the nature of Nirmanakaya. All arising from the Dharmakaya. The Nirmanakaya arises out of the ground of the Dharmakaya. From the Dharmakaya appears the pure illusory forms of the Sambhogakaya, and then the impure and impure illusory forms of the Nirmanakaya, appearing even as the sentient beings of the 6 realms of samsara, whose nature is appearing yet empty of self-nature. Recognizing this is to recognize the ultimate view. The ultimate view is to recognize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. And this is related to the wisdom awareness kila. The wisdom awareness kila recognizes that all arising arises from a single ground. And then that is also, again, related to the material kila of science, but I will speak on that tomorrow. And so through the material kila of science, we perform skillful methods to tame beings according to their needs. The Buddha had said that the Buddhas appear according to the needs of sentient beings. For example, it is said that the 6 Buddhas appear in the 6 realms of samsara according to their specific needs. Lord Jigten Sumgön had said in the Gongchik that everything that is done in the field of knowable things is done by Buddha. So everything that's done in the world at all is a Buddha activity. And so even in for the sentient beings in the lower realms, they still possess this aspect of wisdom or intelligence that is always together with them, that never forsakes them, even for a moment. Now, when we say that the Buddhas never give up on us, they never forsake us, it really means Buddha nature will never leave one, even if one goes into the lower realms. And so this is a very important instruction from a practical perspective. And it also is the very hard essence of both samsara and nirvana. And so all of that is contained within this ritual, within this sadhana. So reflect on that. And so for today, we stop the teachings here. Sashitele.
From the mantra calling, light raising the second calling, did you voice blessing from my mouth into the mouth of the consort? The self-resounding mantra proclaimed by the inconceivable dakas and dakinis in the consorts for chakras outhouses the mind stream. From the consort secret place the mantra garland enters my Vajra henna deities residing with my channels proclaim the sound of the mantra. I visualize the mantra garland dissolving ceaselessly into my heart. Om Vajrakilaya Jahum Bam Ho Katam Kaya Jaya Vijay Hajidaya Barazide Marasin Padmatanaye Zarwa Bignem Bam Hum Ve Om Vajrakilaya Jahum Bam Ho Katam Kaya Jaya Vijay Hajidaya Barazide Marasin Padmatanaye Zarwa Bignem Bam Hum Ve Hoam Vajrakilaya Jahum Mamo Katam Gai Jai Vijay Hajidaya Parasite Marasena Parmadhanaye Sarva Vignam Bham Huangve Hoam Vajrakilaya Jahum Mamo Katam Gai Jai Vijay Hajidaya Parasite Marasena Parmadhanaye Sarva Vignam Bham Huangve Hoam Vajrakilaya Jahum Mamo Katam Gai Jai Vijay Hajide Parasite Marasena Parmadhanaya Sarva Vignam Bham Huangve Hoam Vajrakilaya Jahum Mamo Katam Gai Jai Vijay Hajide Parasite Marasena Parmadhanaya Sarva Vignam Bham Huangve a I re re le le o a ka ka cha 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 chanya ta 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 na pa 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 ma yara lawa sha sa sha haksha swaha a I re re le le o a ka ka cha 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 chanya ta 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 na pa pa ma yara lawa sha sa sha haksha swaha a I re re le le o a ka cha 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 chanya ta ta na pa pa ma yara lawa shakasha saksha swaha Vajrasato Samaya Manabalaya Vajrasato Dvenoba Tisadrita Mebawa Judokayo Mebawa Subakayo Mebawa Anurakta Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Mebrayatsa Sarva Karma Sisame Sisamriyam Guru Hum Ha Hua Bhagavan Sarva Dada Gata Vajramame Muncha Vajrabhava Mahazamaya Gadoha Vajrasatva Samaya Manabalaya Vajrasatva Dinoba Tisadrita Subakayo Mebawa Anuragam Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Mebrayatsa Sarva Karma Sisam Sisam Shriyam Guru Hum Ha Hua Bhagavan Sarva Dada Gata Vajramame Muncha Vajribhava Mahasamaya Satoha Vajrasato Samaya Manobalaya Vajrasato Tvenoba Disadrito Mebawa Sutokayo Mebawa Subakayo Mebawa Anurakta Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Mebrayatsa Sarva Karma Sisam Sisam Shriyam Guru Hum Ha Hua Bhagavan Sarva Dada Gata Vajramame Muncha Vajribhava Mahasamaya Sadhu Hum Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Tekam Tata Gato Hayavati Tekam Chayo Nirodha Hevam Vade Mahashramanaye Zoha Hum Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Tekam Tata Gato Hayavati Tekam Chayo Nirodha Hevam Vade Mahashramanaye Zoha Hum Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Tekam Tata Gato Hayavati Tekam Chayo Nirodha Hevam Vade Mahashramanaye Zoha Glorious great Vajrakilaya and divine God, please come here. I make outer inner and secret offering. I praise your body, speech, mind, qualities. activity is I confess transgression, heedlessness, and confusion, vows marred broken, lovingly consider me with compassion, and please grant all accomplishment to me. Page 36. Gurus, knowledge holders, deities, dakinis, and oath-bound ones, gathered like clouds in the sky, through the power of your pasamaya, please consider us with love and shower down great blessings upon this mandala and us yogins. Vajrakilaya, Vajrayum, you and your mandala act with great compassion, unbiased, unobscured, with timely Vajrasamaya, please send down great blessings and great waves of compassionate activities upon this unsurpassed secret mandala of accomplishment. Please send down great enlightened bodies, speech, mind, bless. blessings, grand supreme wide wisdom's empowerment. Om Sarva Tathagata Bhagavan Samaya Ho Samaya Sva. Time has come to grand empowerment and send down blessings from the secret sphere of Vajrakilaya victorious. Vajra Lord with wise bless you as though once surpassed empowerment, deity, oh, single of is due, give unwavering protection, bestow blessings of our victors on us, please. Varakilaya Samaya Vajrakilaya sarva vignan bam hum ve. Om Vajrakilaya sarva vignan hum ve. Om